welcome back to the channel. Please like, comment, and subscribe for more original horror stories with your host, Dare I. The tower was a bone-white needle stitching the bruised twilight sky to the sprawling, indifferent city. From his small, climate-controlled office on the 17th floor of the municipal archives, Leo could see its crimson-tipped spire catch the last bloody rays of the setting sun. It was an architectural anomaly, a severe, silent column of neoclassical alabaster amidst the modern steel and glass. It was also, according to every official record in the 500,000 square feet of meticulously catalogued history surrounding him, impossible. Leo's life was one of order. His apartment was a study in minimalism. His books were arranged by publication date and genre. His diet consisted of 7 rotating, nutritionally balanced meals. His job was the ultimate extension of his personality. He was an archivist, a secular monk charged with preserving the city's past, ensuring its narrative was complete, uncorrupted, and logical. The tower was an affront to every fiber of his being. For months it had been a quiet, nagging inconsistency. He'd first noticed it while digitizing a set of panoramic photographs from the 1950s. There it was, standing proud and white against a grainy sky. But on a zoning map from the very same year, the plot of land it occupied was an empty, undeveloped lot. A fluke, he'd thought. A cartographical error. Then he found it again in a photograph from the 1920s, and then a hand-drawn rendering from the 1890s. Yet in other documents from the exact same periods, the skyline was unbroken, the space empty. It was a ghost of brick and mortar appearing and disappearing from the historical record with no rhyme or reason. He had spent weeks trying to triangulate its existence, cross-referencing deeds, building permits, demolition orders, utility easements. He found nothing. Not a single scrap of paper acknowledged its construction or its existence. Yet, when he swiveled in his squeaking office chair and looked out the reinforced window, there it stood, solid and real. And every evening, just as the streetlights began their nightly hum, a single, pale light would bloom in its highest window, a lonely, unblinking eye watching the metropolis that refused to acknowledge it. "Staring at your girlfriend again, Leo?" Leo jumped, startled out of his reverie. Clara stood in his doorway, a playful smirk on her face. She was the one beautiful piece of chaos he allowed in his life, a whirlwind of artistic energy who worked as a freelance graphic designer. "It's not my girlfriend," Leo said, a reluctant smile tugging at his lips. "It's a problem, an architectural paradox." "Right," she said, rolling her eyes. "The spooky ghost tower. You know, for a guy who deals in facts, you have a wild imagination." She tossed a small, heavy object onto his desk. It was a vintage brass tuning fork. "Found this at the flea market. Figured it would look good with all your other old stuff." Leo picked it up. It was heavy, perfectly balanced. The initials AW were engraved near the base. "Thanks, Clara. It's perfect. So, are you going to emerge from your paper tomb, or do I have to drag you out?" "It's Friday. Our night." Their night was a ritual. They would try a new, obscure restaurant, a tradition they'd upheld since college. It was a small, predictable adventure. Tonight it was a tiny Ethiopian place tucked away in a neighborhood they'd never explored. As they ate, surrounded by the rich aroma of spices, Leo felt a strange sense of detachment, the conversation and laughter around them seeming to come from a great distance. "You're quiet tonight," Clara noted, scooping up some lentils with a piece of injera. "Still thinking about the tower?" "It's just I found something new," he said, leaning forward. "Or rather, a lack of something. A hole in the record. A chief architect from the 1930s subway expansion project. A man named Alistair. He spearheaded the whole thing. His name is on dozens of preliminary drafts for a new Line 7. And then halfway through the project, he just vanishes. All subsequent documents are signed by his subordinate. There's no record of a transfer, a retirement, a death. He just stops existing on paper. Clara shrugged. People left jobs back then. Maybe he just walked away. Archivists don't just walk away, Leo countered, more sharply than he intended. There's always a trail, a final paycheck, a letter of resignation. With Alistair, there is nothing. It's like he was erased. Clara looked at him, her smile fading, replaced by a flicker of concern. Leo, it was almost 100 years ago. Let it go. He tried. For a week he forced himself to ignore the tower, to focus on his assigned tasks. But the feeling of wrongness persisted, growing like a mold in the damp, quiet corners of his mind. Time itself began to feel porous. He would sit down to work at 9:00 a.m., become absorbed in a document, and look up to find it was nearly noon, with no memory of the intervening hours. He had flashes of déjà vu so intense they left him dizzy, a feeling of having already lived the moment he was in. The real terror began a week later. He was at his desk looking at a cherished photo of him and Clara taken at a street festival the previous summer. In the photo, she was wearing a bright blue scarf he'd bought her. He'd always loved that scarf. He glanced away for a moment to answer an email, and when he looked back, the scarf was green. He blinked, his heart starting to hammer against his ribs. It couldn't be. He was just tired, his eyes playing tricks on him. He closed his eyes, counted to 10, and looked again. The scarf was green. A deep forest green he had never seen before. It was impossible. He knew, with the unshakable certainty of his eidetic memory, that the scarf had been blue. That night he called Clara, his voice tight with a panic he was trying to conceal. "Hey, weird question," he started, forcing a casual tone. "That scarf I got you last year, the one you wore to the festival. What color was it?" There was a pause. "What are you talking about, Leo?" "You got me a necklace for my birthday last year. The little silver one with the star. I'm wearing it right now." Leo's blood ran cold. He remembered the necklace, of course. That was from 2 years ago. "No, Clara, the scarf. The blue one." "I think you're confusing me with one of your other girlfriends," she said, her attempt at a joke falling flat. "I've never owned a blue scarf. Look, I'm kind of busy. Can I call you back?" The line went dead. Leo stumbled to his bookshelf, snatching up the photo. The scarf was still green, but something else was different. Clara's smile was smaller, less vibrant. The light in her eyes seemed dimmer. She was fading. Not her body, but her essence. Her history. The history. He looked out the window. The light in the tower was a fierce, unwavering beacon in the darkness. It was watching him, and it was rewriting his world. His research became a desperate, frantic race against his own dissolving reality. The archives were no longer a sanctuary, they were a battlefield where he fought to hold on to the past before it was unwritten. He abandoned official records and dove into the city's forgotten lore. He found the journals of a woman named Elena, dated 1928, whose husband, Thomas, had been a stonemason. October 12th, she wrote in a trembling, spidery script. "Thomas came home late. He has been working on the foundation for the new bank downtown. He complains of a strange hum from the ground and a light from the old white spire that gives him headaches. He seems distant. He forgot our anniversary today. October 19th, read a later entry. He grows thin in my memory. I know that I love him, but I am beginning to forget why. His face is a blur when I close my eyes. Last night I heard a chime. It was not a sound but a feeling, a single, pure note that resonated in my bones. When I woke up, the space beside me in the bed was cold, and for a moment I could not remember who was supposed to be there. The final entry was a week later, the page stained with what looked like tears. Thomas is gone. The photographs are empty. There is a space in them, a man-shaped hole that no one else can see. My family tells me I never married. They look at me with such pity. Am I mad? The only thing I know for sure is the white towel with the red tip. It watches me. I think it is waiting for me to forget too. Leo slammed the journal shut, a strangled sob escaping his lips. The White Chime. A correction. The towel didn't kill people. It did something infinitely worse. It made them never have existed at all. And it was happening to him, through Clara. The next day, a colleague Leo had worked with for 3 years, a quiet man named Ben, was gone. His desk was empty. When Leo asked where he was, his supervisor gave him a puzzled look. There's no Ben in this department, Leo. It's always been just you and Sarah. Sarah nodded in agreement, looking at him with the same pitying expression Elena had described. He was being isolated. The tower was methodically trimming the branches of his life, one by one, until only the trunk remained, ready to be felled. He went back to Alistair, the erased architect. If the tar had corrected him, it was because he was a threat. His unfinished line 7 was the key. He spent 2 sleepless days and nights poring over every document related to the project, no matter how trivial. He finally found it, a hidden compartment in the binding of a leather-bound geological survey. Inside were several pages of onion-skin paper covered in Alistair's frantic handwriting and complex physics equations. Alistair had figured it out. The tower wasn't a building, it was an anchor, a resonant instrument designed to maintain a specific version of reality, a prime timeline. The massive red crystal beneath it was its power source. Anything or anyone that threatened to deviate from that timeline, an architect who might shatter the crystal, an archivist who might uncover the truth, was designated an anomaly. And the tower made corrections. But Alistair had found a loophole. The tower's power was also its weakness. Its resonance could be disrupted. If a count frequency could be introduced directly at the source, it would create a feedback loop, effectively deafening the white chime, rendering it dormant. The notes contained a desperate, brilliant plan. Armed with Alistair's notes, a copper cable stripped from a decommissioned server, and the old brass tuning fork Clara had given him, Leo descended into the abandoned subway station. The air that rushed up to meet him was cold and smelled of stagnant water and ozone. The silence was absolute. Then the chime began. It was a pressure inside his skull, a clean, high frequency that vibrated through his bones and made his teeth ache. With the chime came the forgetting. He looked down at the notes, and Alistair's name was just a jumble of letters. He thought of his apartment, and could only picture an empty room. He tried to hold onto Clara's face, but it was like trying to cup water in his hands. He stumbled forward into the oppressive darkness, guided only by the fading imprint of Alistair's instructions. The tunnel walls seemed to writhe and shift. Ghostly images flickered at the edge of his vision. Men in 1930s work clothes digging with picks and shovels, their forms transparent, their faces etched with a silent, looping despair. The echoes of the corrected. Reality frayed. The tunnel would suddenly become his childhood hallway, then a bustling city street from a century ago, then back to a crumbling concrete tube. The chime was a physical force trying to unmake him, to scatter his consciousness across time. His nose began to bleed. He clutched the notes, the physical paper, a frail anchor in the temporal storm. He finally broke through into a vast cavern. In the center, a colossal, jagged crystal formation pulsed with a soft, internal red light, casting dancing shadows on the cavern walls. It was the heart of the tower, the engine of correction. The chime was a deafening roar in his mind, a sound that was the absence of all other sound. His own name was gone. He was nothing but a collection of fading sensations. He fought through the mental agony, his movements robotic, driven by the last vestiges of Alastair's will, imprinted on the pages in his hand. He found the old power conduits. He wrapped the copper cable around the base of the crystal, the touch sending a painful, cleansing jolt of electricity up his arm, momentarily clearing the fog from his brain. He pulled out the tuning fork. The chime reached its crescendo, an unbearable point of pressure that felt like it would split his skull. It was now or never. He summoned the last dregs of his identity, a fleeting image of a laughing woman with a green scarf, no blue exclamation, and struck the fork against the rock wall. A pure, resonant A-sharp filled the cavern, a perfect count frequency. For a moment, the two sounds battled, a war waged in a spectrum beyond hearing. The air vibrated, the ground shook. The red glow of the crystal flickered violently. Then, the chime shattered into a million silent pieces. The pressure in his head vanished, and there was only a profound, blessed silence. He stumbled out of the tunnels and into the cool, pre-dawn air. The city was quiet, asleep. He looked to the horizon. The tower stood, a pale silhouette. The light in its window was dark. The crimson tip was just paint. He sprinted back to his apartment, bursting through the door. He went straight to the bookshelf and snatched up the photo. It was perfect. Clara was vibrant, solid, her smile real, and her scarf was a brilliant, impossible blue. His phone rang. It was her. "Leo, are you okay? I had the weirdest dream about you." Her voice was warm, real, and full of the shared history that was now, once again, theirs. He had won. He had anchored himself to reality. In the following weeks, life returned to a fragile normalcy. But the world was different. He knew its secret. He checked the archives. Alastair's file was there, thick and detailed, celebrating his completion of Line 7. The tower hadn't just been defeated, it had corrected its own failure, seamlessly weaving a new truth into the past. Other small inconsistencies he had noticed over the years were gone, smoothed over. The city's history was now perfect. Too perfect. One evening, Leo sat at his desk staring out at the dark, silent tower. He was no longer an anomaly to be erased. He was a known quantity, a part of the system. He had traded his freedom for his existence. He caught his reflection in the dark glass of the window. For a terrifying, heart-stopping second, his image flickered, turning transparent. He saw the grid of the city's lights right through his own chest. The tower was dormant, but it was still there, and it was watching him, its silent correction now a part of him. He was a ghost in his own life, forever bound to the history he had fought to save, knowing that the price of becoming an anomaly again would be an erasure from which there would be no return.